Hello, and thank you for stopping by. If you are a subscriber, welcome back. If you are not a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button so you can be notified when new videos arrive. Over the last month or so, we've had some school shootings and some public shootings. There's always public shootings going on in the United States. That's just something that happens. But we've had a massive school shooting down in Texas. And I'm not really for sure what's being done about it. I'm kind of torn because we have the Second Amendment, which people have been allowed to believe that it guarantees their right to have a handgun or to bear an arm. They take that to mean gun. But are they reading that Second Amendment out of context? Have we been allowed to assume the meaning that we have assumed it is? The reason I'm asking this is because I came across an article that I was reading through, and it very much goes along with the things that I think or that I believe. I believe that the way things have become today is not exactly the way the Founding Fathers envisioned for us in the beginning when this whole thing got started. Now, I'm going to read you some of this, and then I'm going to talk about it as I read it. And it is entitled, What the Second Amendment Really Meant to the Founding Fathers. What did it mean when they were writing it? We assume we understand what they meant, but do we really know for sure? Was the Second Amendment meant to be just the right to bear arms? Or were you supposed to be part of something much bigger than that? Well, this is what is said, and I'm going to talk about it as I read it. Love it or hate it, the Second Amendment provides the constitutional framework for American gun laws. As with all things constitutional, Americans are adapting 18th century laws to fit 21st century lives. But in reality, the concerns of the Founding Fathers had little to do with either side's position in the modern gun control debate. None of the issues animating that debate, from stand your ground laws to assault weapon bans, entered into the founders' thinking. Which means the things that we find important today, they had not even thought about in those days. Yet, because both sides in debate about the Second Amendment invoke what the founders would have thought, it is important to look at what they actually intended. And that is possible to do because there is an awful lot of things that they have written about what they meant. One, Founding Fathers were devoted to the militia. They were. They were very, very devoted to a militia. Read the debates about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and the militia's important leaps off the page. Alexander Hamilton, writing in the Federalist Papers, called a well-regulated militia the most natural defense of a free country. His anti-Federalist critics agreed with the need for a citizens' militia, writing that a well-regulated militia composed of the Yeomanry, Yeomanry. See, that's why back in those days, the words that they used may not be used today. How many people use this Yeomanry? Yeomanry. We hardly ever use that. but that was a word they used back then. And see, that's one of the reasons why the Bill of Rights, especially the Second Amendment, is hard to understand the way it was written. It says the Yeomanry of the country have ever been considered as a bulwark of a free people. Who uses bulwark? B-U-L-W-A-R-K, bulwark. Let me read that again. A well-regulated militia composed of the Yeomanry of the country, which meant the natural citizens or the actual citizens of the country, have ever been considered as the bulwark of a free people. Their disagreement was over how best to ensure that the militia was maintained. Not that we should have one, not that it's not important to have one, but that it is important and how shall it be maintained, as well as how to divide up the roles of the national government versus the state government. That's what they discussed. How to divide up the roles of the national government versus a state government. Both sides were devoted to the idea that all citizens should be part-time soldiers because both sides believed a standing army was existential threat, that a standing army was an existential threat to the ideas of the revolution. An existential threat. What is a standing army? The United States Army, United States Marine Corps, United States Navy, and United States Air Force. They are considered a standing army, and the Founding Fathers believed that a standing army was an existential threat to the ideas of the revolution, which meant that their ideas of revolution from England was that a standing army could stop that in case it needed to be done again. The United States Army, as we know it now, if America decided to revolt against our government because we felt that our government was not acting in our best interest and we needed to overthrow that government and put in a new government, we can no longer do that. Why? Because we don't have a regulated militia anymore, and a standing army, the United States Army, Marines, Air Force, National Guard, even State Guard, could come in and they can stop us from doing that. 2, the amendment's primary justification was to prevent the United States from needing a standing army. The whole idea of us having a well-regulated militia was so that we wouldn't need the United States Army, United States Marines, Air Force, and Navy. We had a militia, a well-regulated militia. Preventing the United States from starting a professional army, in fact, was the single most important goal of the Second Amendment. It is hard to recapture this fear today, but during the 18th century, few boogeymen were as scary as the standing army, which meant that a regular army or a United Army, United States Army, was way more fear. You had more fear of an army, a government army, than you did the well-regulated militia. Preventing the United States from starting a professional army, in fact, was the single most important goal of the Second Amendment. So if that was an important goal of the Second Amendment, then why do we have a standing army now? It was an army made up of professional, full-time soldiers. That is a standing army. They are professional, full-time soldiers. By the logic of the 18th century, any society with a professional army could never be truly free. The men in charge of that army could order it to attack the citizens themselves, who, unarmed and unorganized, would be unable to fight back. This was why a well-regulated militia was necessary to the security of a free state. To be secure, a society needed to be able to defend itself, to be free. It could not exist merely at the whim of a standing army and its generals. That is very true. That is no longer today because we have a lot of people that have been brainwashed and they believe that the United States Army, go Army, Marines, hoorah, Navy, Air Force, all of that could, they are so entrenched in our psyche that we can't think of not having them. The only way to be both free and secure was for a citizen to be armed, organized, and ready to defend society. The choice was a stark one, a standing army or a free nation. We chose a standing army. We have the appearance of freedom, but we don't really have freedom. 3. The authors of the Bill of Rights were not concerned with an individual or a person's right to bear arms. Did you hear that? The author of the Bill of Rights they were not concerned with the individual or personal right to bear arms. The Second Amendment did not guarantee you the right to bear arms on its own. Before the landmark 2008 Supreme Court case, District of Columbia versus Heller, courts had ruled that the rights of individual citizens to bear arms existed only within the context of participation in the militia. In Heller, the Supreme Court overturned that precedent, delivering gun rights advocates their biggest legal victory. The court stepped in and changed everything. And see, the American people, me included, we are not well read on the way of the world and the way of the Founding Fathers. I mean, a lot of us are armchair critics and quarterbacks, armchair quarterbacks. We get on YouTube and we get on Facebook and we get on social sites and Twitter and all of that, and we blather out ideas that we think are true, and we haven't the slightest idea what we're doing. That was not, however, a return to an original understanding of the Second Amendment, as Justice Anton Scalia claimed for the majority. It's not that the Founding Fathers were against the idea of an individual's rights to bear arms. It just was not an issue that concerned them. Well, it kind of was. That's why they put a well-regulated militia in the Second Amendment. Again, the militia was all important. The men writing the Bill of Rights wanted every citizen to be in the militia, and they wanted everyone in the militia to be armed. If someone was prohibited from participating in the militia, the leaders of the founders' generation would not have wanted them to have access to weapons. See, I keep telling people that the Second Amendment included a well-regulated militia on purpose. It's not a Part A and it's not a Part B. It's not something you can add on or take away from. It is there for the long haul. The Founding Fathers were very concerned about who should or should not be armed. Again, if someone was prohibited from participating in the militia, the leaders of the founders' generation would not have wanted them to have access to weapons. In fact, the 18th century regulations that required citizens to participate in the militia also prohibited blacks and Indians from participating as arms-bearing members. So, what do you think? Do you like the way the Founding Fathers thought about the Second Amendment? Do you believe that the Second Amendment, the way it was written, and the way the Founding Fathers wanted it to be written, could be used today? Do you think that America could get rid of its military? Do you think it's possible to have a standing army and to still be a free country? Do you think it's possible that our government would misuse and abuse the standing army to destroy the American public? If you have any ideas that you would like to put into the comments, please do so. If you want to say something about this video, please put it in the comments below. Also, remember that our prayers go out to the ones that were killed, the families that were left in this latest shooting. Plus, not just for this shooting, but the families of all the people that have lost loved ones senselessly to gun violence. Anyway, if you like this video, I know it's very long. I'm sorry about that. Give me a big old thumbs up and a like and a subscribe so you can be notified when new videos arrive. I want to leave you with this note. Remember, make tomorrow better than yesterday by doing the very best we can today. Have a good afternoon, America, and all points beyond.